A look at the legacy of the former Star Trek star Nichelle Nichols, best known for playing Lieutenant Uhura, who's died, aged 89.
There are people who appear on screen and entertain you. Then there are people who appear on screen and quietly change the course of history. Nichelle Nichols belonged to the second group, though for most of her life, she carried the weight of that truth largely in silence. The cameras caught her grace, her elegance, her confidence. What they never showed were the moments off set, the frustrations behind closed doors, the lines cut from scripts without explanation, the photographs taken and then quietly cropped so her face disappeared from promotional materials. Before her death on July 30, 2022, Nichelle Nichols began speaking more openly than she ever had. What she confirmed was something that fans had long suspected but never fully heard from her own lips, that behind one of television's most celebrated progressive visions, there were deeply human failures, quiet injustices, and a personal strength that never broke even when it was tested severely. To understand what she finally revealed, you have to understand who Nichelle Nichols was before she ever set foot on the bridge of the USS Enterprise. Born Grace Dell Nichols on December 28, 1932, in Robbins, Illinois, she was one of 6 children raised in a household shaped by both civic duty and hard work. Her father held the remarkable distinction of serving as mayor and chief magistrate of Robbins, a town with a significant black population on the outskirts of Chicago. Nichols later recalled that she disliked her given name so much as a child that she asked her parents to choose something new for her. They offered Nichelle, telling her it meant victorious maiden. She accepted it without hesitation. It was a name that would prove prophetic. The family eventually moved to Chicago's Woodlawn neighborhood, where young Nichelle threw herself into the arts with complete devotion. By age 12, she was enrolled at the Chicago Ballet Academy, and her natural talent for performance was unmistakable. As a teenager and young adult, she toured professionally across the United States and Canada, performing with orchestras led by Duke Ellington and Lionel Hampton, 2 giants of American music who did not offer opportunities to the unprepared or the untalented. She appeared in the 1959 film adaptation of Porgy and Bess and later caught the eye of Hugh Hefner after starring in Oscar Brown Jr.'s musical Kicks and Company. Hefner hired her as a singer at his Chicago Playboy Club, and her reputation in the entertainment world began to grow steadily. She graced the cover of Ebony magazine in January 1967. She performed in New York and on the West Coast. She appeared in James Baldwin's Blues for Mr. Charlie to significant critical praise. By the time Gene Roddenberry came calling, Nichelle Nichols was not a newcomer looking for her break. She was an accomplished artist who had already built something real. Her first connection to Roddenberry came through a guest appearance on his earlier television series, The Lieutenant, in an episode dealing directly with racial prejudice in the military. Roddenberry had noticed something in her that went beyond talent. There was an authority in how she carried herself, a natural dignity that he believed could redefine what audiences expected from a black woman on American television. When Star Trek premiered in September 1966, Nichols stepped into the role of Lieutenant Uhura, and for the first time in the history of the medium, a black woman was seated at the command center of a major network drama not as a servant, not as a side character defined entirely by her race, but as a skilled, respected, indispensable member of a professional team. She wore her uniform with the same quiet authority as anyone else on that bridge. She spoke with intelligence. She was addressed with titles and treated with regard. For millions of viewers who had never seen anything like it, the impact was immediate and profound. But what the camera never lingered on was what happened when the lights went down. In the years before her death, Nichols confirmed experiences that her fans had long pieced together from scattered interviews and second-hand accounts. She spoke about feeling overlooked in ways that were difficult to prove but impossible to ignore. Promotional materials for the show were assembled and distributed, and when she looked at them, she noticed that her image was frequently absent, or present only in a reduced, marginal way. Scripts arrived with her character's contributions trimmed down to a handful of lines, even during episodes where Uhura's role as communications officer should have placed her at the center of the action. There were moments when it seemed as though certain decisions were being made to limit how much space she occupied on screen, not because of her performance, which received praise, but because of what she represented. She was a black woman in a prominent role on primetime television at a moment when America was still violently resisting the idea of racial equality. The pressure from outside the show to shrink her presence was real, and it found its way into the production in ways both obvious and subtle. It was during the break between Star Trek's first and second seasons that Nichols came closest to walking away entirely. She had received an offer to perform on Broadway, the stage she had always considered her truest home, and the accumulated frustrations of feeling marginalized on the show made the decision feel easy. She went to Gene Roddenberry and resigned. She told him directly that she was leaving. What happened next became one of the most significant conversations in the history of American television, though it did not take place on any set. Roddenberry listened to her carefully, and rather than accepting her resignation immediately, he asked her to give herself a weekend before making the decision final. She agreed. That weekend, she attended an NAACP fundraising event in Los Angeles. She was approached by a representative who told her that a fan wished to meet her, someone who admired her work deeply. Nichols assumed she was about to greet an enthusiastic viewer of the show. Instead, she came face to face with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The moment she described this encounter in her later years, the emotion in her voice was always unmistakable. Dr. King did not simply say that he enjoyed Star Trek. He told her that he and his family were devoted watchers of the program and that her role as Lieutenant Uhura was unlike anything else on American television. He described her character not as entertainment but as evidence that the future he was fighting and dying for was possible. He told her that she was playing a critical role in the civil rights movement, not by marching or protesting, but by being present each week in the homes of millions of Americans, sitting at that console, doing her job, being fully human and fully equal in a future that had not yet arrived. He said that if she left the show, she would be making a mistake. He asked her to stay. Nichols returned to Roddenberry's office on Monday morning. When she told him about the conversation, Roddenberry was moved to tears. He told her that he had always known her presence on the show was important beyond its entertainment value. He had fought for her from the beginning, fought to keep her character's role meaningful, fought against pressures from network executives who were uncertain about the boldness of his casting choices. He had not always won those fights, which was part of what Nichols had experienced in the form of trimmed lines and absent photographs. But he had never stopped trying. Hearing Dr. King's words confirmed everything he had believed about what Star Trek could mean for the country. Nichols stayed. And in staying, she changed the lives of people she would never meet. Among those people was a young girl in Pittsburgh named Whoopi Goldberg. Goldberg has spoken publicly many times about the specific memory of seeing Nichelle Nichols on the television screen as a child, of running through the house calling out to her family to come and look at what she had found. She was not pointing at a celebrity. She was pointing at proof. There was a black woman on television who was not a maid, not a joke, not a tragic figure. She was a professional in the future, treated with full respect, doing important work. Goldberg has said that Uhura made her understand for the first time that black women would be part of what came next. That vision stayed with her for decades and eventually brought her back to the Star Trek universe as Guinan in The Next Generation, a character created specifically for her because of her lifelong connection to what Nichols had built. Dr. Mae Jemison, who in 1992 became the first black woman to travel to space, has cited Nichelle Nichols as one of the most significant influences on her decision to pursue a career in science and aerospace. Jemison has said that watching Uhura on television gave her the image she needed to believe that her ambitions were not unreasonable. She was not dreaming outside the bounds of what was possible, she was simply dreaming ahead of her time, as Nichols had done before her. One of the most discussed and debated moments of Nichols' career on Star Trek was a scene in the third season episode Plato's Stepchildren, which aired on November 22, 1968. In the episode, alien beings with psychic powers compel the crew members to act against their will. Among the moments they engineer is a kiss between Lieutenant Uhura and Captain James T. Kirk. It was not the first interracial kiss ever depicted in the history of film, as some accounts have incorrectly claimed, but it was among the most widely seen interracial kisses in American television history, broadcast during primetime on a major network to an audience of millions. NBC was deeply anxious about the scene. The network asked the production to reshoot it without the physical contact. Nichols and William Shatner discussed the situation and refused to comply. According to Nichols' own account, Shatner took a creative approach to the reshoots. He deliberately performed them poorly, with expressions and choices so awkward and unusable that the editors had no choice but to return to the original footage. The kiss aired as filmed. The response was overwhelmingly positive. The network had braced for outrage and instead received bags of mail expressing support, admiration, and gratitude. Among the letters Nichols later discussed was one from a white Southern man who acknowledged his personal opposition to interracial relationships but admitted that something about the scene had pierced through his resistance. He could not fully explain it. He found himself moved despite himself. Nichols reflected on that letter often because she felt it illustrated exactly what Roddenberry had always believed, that showing something true and human, without apology, had the power to shift something inside a person even when direct argument could not. Nichols was also candid about the complicated dynamics she navigated with her co-stars. Her relationship with William Shatner was not without tension. She acknowledged that there were years of misunderstanding and friction between them, though she also said that their relationship eventually softened and that she came to recognize and appreciate the role he had played in preserving the historic moment they had shared on screen. Her warmest memories were of Leonard Nimoy, who played Spock. She described Nimoy as someone who treated her as an equal from the very beginning, who checked in on her, who acknowledged the particular difficulty of her position as one of the very few black women in a prominent television role during a volatile period in American history. She said his consistency made a genuine difference to her experience on set. George Takei, who played Hikaru Sulu, was a source of consistent joy and lightness for her. DeForest Kelley, who played Dr. McCoy, she described as one of the kindest people she ever worked with in the industry, a man whose even temperament and decency created a stabilizing presence on a set that was not always easy. When the original series ended in 1969, Nichols did not disappear. She returned for the animated Star Trek series, appeared in 6 Star Trek feature films, and continued working in film, television, and theater across multiple decades. She played a tough, independent madam opposite Isaac Hayes in the 1974 film Truck Turner. She lent her voice to animated series including Gargoyles and Batman, the animated series. She appeared on Heroes as Nana Dawson, a grandmother navigating life after Hurricane Katrina. She played a role on The Young and the Restless in 2016 that earned her a Daytime Emmy nomination. She released 2 music albums. She choreographed a film she also produced and acted in. She gave no indication, at any point, of believing that her story was finished.